The room smelled like burnt coffee and cigarette smoke, the kind of smell that clings to recording studios the way regret clings to bad decisions. It was 1982, and Motown's headquarters in Los Angeles had seen better days. The golden era of the Hitsville sound was fading at the edges, the empire slightly cracked but still standing, still hungry. Barry Gordy had spent the last 12 months engineering what he believed would be his greatest coup yet, signing Donna Summer, the queen of disco, the woman who had sold more records in the late 70s than almost anyone alive, had come home to Motown's roof. And Gordy, never a man who left money sitting on a table, had one idea burning in his mind from the moment the ink dried on her contract. He was going to put Marvin Gaye and Donna Summer in the same room and let the world catch fire. What Gordy didn't understand, what he never fully understood about Marvin, even after 2 decades, was that you didn't engineer Marvin Gaye. You didn't schedule his genius into a calendar slot and expect it to arrive on time, dressed and cooperative. Marvin operated on a frequency that Gordy's spreadsheets couldn't measure. He moved through the world at his own pace, in his own key, and any attempt to conduct him like an orchestra section had always ended the same way, badly, loudly, and with Gordy losing. But Gordy was persistent. He set the meeting for a Tuesday afternoon. He told Marvin it was informal. Just a conversation, just 2 artists in a room getting to know each other. He told Donna the same thing. Neither of them was told the full picture, because Gordy knew that if either one of them understood what he was building, one of them would walk before they even got started. Donna Summer arrived first. She was 33 years old and had the kind of composure that comes from having survived disco's collapse with her dignity intact. The genre had eaten itself alive. The backlash had been vicious. The disco sucks movement ugly and personal in ways that went beyond musical preference. And Donna had come through it not broken, but recalibrated. She sat in the lounge outside Studio B, her hands folded in her lap, watching the door. Marvin was 43 minutes late. He walked in wearing a burgundy shirt open at the collar, his beard trimmed close, his eyes carrying that particular quality they always carried. Something watchful, something slightly removed from the room he was standing in, as if he was perpetually listening to a song no one else could hear. He saw Donna. He stopped. People in the room later described what happened in those first few seconds differently, depending on who you asked. One assistant said Marvin smiled. A studio engineer said he went still in a way that was different from his usual stillness. More alert, like an animal that has suddenly caught a scent it wasn't expecting. What everyone agreed on was that the room changed when Marvin walked in. Not because he demanded it, because he simply was, and the space around him rearranged itself accordingly. Donna stood. They shook hands. Marvin said something quiet that nobody else heard, and Donna laughed. A real laugh, not a polite one. And for a moment, the tension that had been building in that room since Gordy first sketched his plan on a napkin dissolved completely. They sat across from each other at the long table, and Gordy, who had been hovering near the doorway, finally exhaled. The conversation lasted almost 2 hours. They talked about God, which shouldn't have been surprising given that both of them had been raised in church. Both of them had spent their careers wrestling with the tension between the sacred and the sensual, between the gospel their parents had given them and the music the world wanted from their bodies. Donna had released a Christian album the year before, had publicly recommitted her faith, had drawn lines in her artistry that certain producers found inconvenient. Marvin understood that immediately. He had been drawing and erasing those same lines his entire life. They talked about what it meant to survive the music industry's version of love. Consumption dressed in a compliment, praise and promotion, right up until the moment you stopped being profitable, at which point the calls stopped coming, and you discovered you had been a product all along, never a person. Donna talked about the disco years without romanticizing them. She said it had been extraordinary and exhausting and lonely in ways she hadn't fully understood until it was over. Marvin nodded slowly, the way he nodded when something landed true. Nobody mentioned the duet. Gordy had planned to raise it toward the end of the meeting, once the warmth was established, once the chemistry was visible and undeniable, and the chemistry was visible. Even the assistants who were pretending to organize papers in the corner could feel it. Two people who understood each other without needing the usual runway of explanation. Two people who had both been told in different ways by different powerful men that they were instruments to be played rather than artists to be heard. The executives in the room could see it. Gordy could see it, which meant the folder, sitting in his briefcase, already prepared, already inevitable, was about to do exactly what he needed it to do. Or so he thought. But then something shifted. Gordy cleared his throat. He said there was a song, actually there were several songs, that he had been thinking about, that the writers had been developing, something that could work for both of them, something that could remind the world who Marvin Gaye and Donna Summer were when they were operating at full power. He pushed a folder across the table. Lyrics, chord progressions, a rough concept. Marvin didn't touch the folder. He looked at it for a long moment, and then he looked at Gordy, and the temperature in the room dropped several degrees in a way that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Those who knew Marvin recognized the look. It wasn't anger. Anger was too simple, too hot. This was something older and colder. The look he got when he realized he had been maneuvered, when the architecture of a situation revealed itself, and he saw that what he had been told was a conversation was actually an audition. The folder, the song someone else had written, the plan that had been made before he walked through the door. He had been here before. He had been here with Gordy 100 times. He picked up the folder. He opened it. He read 2 pages. Then he closed it, set it back on the table, and pushed it gently back toward the center. He stood up. He said almost conversationally that he appreciated everything. He said the afternoon had been genuinely good, and he meant it. He looked at Donna when he said it, not at Gordy, and something passed between them that the room couldn't fully decode. Then he thanked everyone, buttoned his shirt collar for no apparent reason, and walked out. The silence he left behind was the particular silence of a room that has just watched something irreversible happen. Gordy sat with his hands flat on the table. The folder sat between them like evidence. Donna Summer looked at the door Marvin had walked through, and her expression was not what anyone expected. It wasn't relief or awkwardness or the polite neutrality of someone managing an uncomfortable moment. It looked to the people watching like recognition, like she had just watched someone do the things she had been trying to find the language to do for years. She would say later, not immediately, not publicly, but in conversations that made their way through the industry the way all true things eventually do, that she had understood exactly what Marvin was refusing. Not the duet, not the collaboration, not even the folder. He was refusing the premise, the idea that his voice was a resource to be allocated, that his presence in a room was a business asset to be deployed, that the connection he had just made with another human being over 2 hours of real conversation could be smoothly converted into a product and sold. He had done that calculation before. He knew what it cost. What Gordy never admitted was that he had heard Marvin's exit coming for years. Every time he thought he had Marvin contained, had the contract language tight enough, the financial pressure real enough, the project commercial enough, Marvin found the seam, not dramatically, not with speeches or press releases, just by standing up and walking through a door, leaving behind a silence that said everything his words didn't. The duet never happened. The songs in the folder were eventually given to other artists. Gordy moved forward with Donna Summer's solo Motown project, and the world moved on in the way the world always moves on. Quickly, without looking back, already reaching for the next thing. But in a hallway outside Studio B, before she got into her car that afternoon, Donna Summer said something to one of the junior assistants who had been in the room. She said it quietly, almost to herself, in the way people say things they've just understood. She said, "If we had recorded together, one of us would have disappeared into the other, and I think we both knew which one it would have been." She wasn't talking about Marvin. There is a particular kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It arrives the way Marvin Gaye arrived that Tuesday afternoon, late, unhurried, already tuned to a frequency the room couldn't quite reach, and it leaves the same way, without explanation, without needing one. The executives in that building had spent years trying to understand why Marvin was so difficult to hold, why every contract felt like a negotiation with water, Why the plans they made around him dissolved before they reached completion. They thought the problem was stubbornness, ego, or the instability that came with everything Marvin carried. The addiction, the depression, the father, the grief. But Donna Summer understood something in those 2 hours that Gordy never did in 20 years. The problem wasn't that Marvin refused to cooperate. The problem was that Marvin refused to disappear. And in an industry built on the managed disappearance of artists into their own images, that refusal was the most radical act available to him. Sexual healing had just given him back a commercial footing. The Grammys had reminded the world that his voice was still one of the great instruments of the century. He had climbed back from Belgium, from the ocean, from the financial wreckage and the paranoia, and the years of watching Motown treat his catalog like a commodity while treating him like a liability. He had survived all of it. And now here was Gordy, folder in hand, ready to harness the comeback, to take whatever fragile thing Marvin had rebuilt in exile and monetize it one more time, package it alongside another great voice, and sell the combination to a world that would buy anything with the right names attached. Marvin stood up because sitting down would have meant agreeing, not to the songs in the folder. The songs were almost beside the point. Sitting down would have meant agreeing that he was still available for that transaction, that the industry could still reach into whatever he had become in those years abroad, in that studio by the North Sea, and pull out something saleable. He was not available for that. He may have been broke and compromised and carrying more damage than any one person should have to carry, but he was not available for that. The folder stayed on the table. The room stayed quiet. And somewhere in that quiet, if you knew how to listen, and Donna Summer, it turned out, knew exactly how to listen, you could hear the thing Marvin had been trying to say his entire career. Not in the protest songs or the bedroom ballads or the albums that had changed the shape of American music. In the silence after, in the door closing. In the choice to leave a room that wanted everything from him except the one thing he had left to give. Himself undiluted on his own terms or not at all.